They called him raw. They called him wild. But Russell Westbrook didn't care what they called him. Because from day one, he was never here to fit in. He was here to tear it all down. Back in UCLA, he wasn't even a top recruit. Scouts said he was too aggressive, too chaotic, too out of control. But behind that chaos was hunger. A kind of hunger that scared people. Not because it was reckless, but because it was real. Russ never had the luxury of calm. No polished media image. No pre-draft hype. Just rage, fire, and a pair of knees that moved like rocket launchers. He entered the league in 2008, and the NBA wasn't ready. He wasn't the future they had marketed. He wasn't soft-spoken or calculated. He was explosive. Unpredictable. Unapologetic. The Thunder drafted him, and from the moment he touched the floor, something cracked. He didn't play basketball. He attacked it. Every drive was a war. Every dunk was a warning. He didn't play for finesse. He played for fear. And yet, no one could look away. Then came the trio: Durant, Harden, and Russ. Everyone saw KD as the golden boy, the silent killer. Harden the crafty one. And Russ? Russ was the storm. He didn't care about narratives. He didn't care about branding. He cared about dominating. But what the world didn't see, what they refused to accept, was that Russ wasn't just fire. He was vision. Precision. Obsession. While Durant was the poster, Westbrook was the engine. Behind the scenes, tension started brewing. Durant's calm clashed with Russ's chaos. Coaches couldn't tame him. Analysts couldn't label him. The league tried to box him in. But you can't cage a storm. Then came that season. The 2012 finals. The rise and the heartbreak. The Thunder fell to the Heat, but the world started asking one question. Is Westbrook holding Durant back? It was subtle at first. Media jabs. Pundits planting seeds. Russell shoots too much. Russell's ego is too big. Russell doesn't know how to play team basketball. And just like that, the narrative war began. Durant was the hero. Westbrook was the chaos. And Russ? He stayed silent. But inside, he boiled. He wasn't just playing to win anymore. He was playing to prove he belonged. When Harden left, Russ didn't blink. When criticism hit, he didn't flinch. Because this wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about legacy. It was about every single person who told him, "You'll never be enough." And in those moments, Russell didn't break. He mutated. By 2016, the writing was on the wall. Durant was leaving. Everyone expected Westbrook to fall apart. But instead, he exploded. And that leads us into a new era. An era where Russell Westbrook went from co-star to lone wolf. And the NBA? It wasn't ready for what came next. The moment Kevin Durant walked out of Oklahoma, a storm didn't just rise, it erupted. Russell Westbrook stood in the ashes, alone. No co-star. No backup. No shield. Everyone expected the Thunder to collapse. They said Russ couldn't lead. They said he was too wild, too selfish. But Russ didn't respond with words. He responded with war. 2016-17. The NBA had never seen anything like it. Every game felt like a personal vendetta. Every rebound was stolen from giants. Every assist was a calculated bullet. Every bucket was a scream. And the man who was too reckless to be a leader. He averaged a triple-double for the entire season. You heard that right, a triple-double. Points. Assists. Rebounds. Every single night. It wasn't just dominance. It was defiance. The league tried to act impressed, but deep down, they were terrified. Russ wasn't playing within the system. Russ was the system. This wasn't basketball. It was a rebellion. Every dunk was a middle finger to every analyst who called him a stat padder. Every clutch shot was revenge for every headline that said he couldn't lead without KD. He didn't just silence critics, he drowned them. The Thunder weren't contenders on paper. But they had him. And that season, that mythical, ferocious, history-bending season, Russell Westbrook became the first player in 55 years to average a triple-double across an entire season. And not just once. He did it 4 times. Back to back. Let that sink in. In a league full of polished narratives and corporate champions, a man with no filter and no breaks rewrote history. And what did the NBA give him? A standing ovation? No. They gave him a label. Out of control. Inefficient. Hard to work with. Because Russ wasn't marketable. He wasn't polished or politically correct. He wasn't a social media darling. He was raw, unfiltered reality in a league obsessed with presentation. Coaches didn't know how to coach him. Teammates couldn't keep up with him. Front offices feared him. But fans? Fans were mesmerized. Because for all his rage and fury, he was real. And behind that aggression was a man carrying pain. Pain of betrayal. Pain of blame. Pain of constantly being the villain in someone else's story. But he kept going. Thunder tried to help. They brought in stars. Paul George. Carmelo. But they didn't fit Russ's fire. They played chess. He played street war. And slowly, the cracks began. Playoff exits. Early flameouts. The media sharpened their knives again. See? He can't win. Triple-doubles don't matter if you can't get past the first round. But no one talked about the rosters. The rotations. The coaching. They just blamed Russ. Because he was easy to blame. A lone wolf who refused to smile for cameras. And still, he didn't fold. He didn't beg. He didn't change. He just burned. Every city he entered, every game he played, he left a scorch mark. But deep inside, a fire was dying. The NBA wasn't just resisting him anymore. It was pushing him out. The MVP who was once a nuclear force was now seen as a problem. And so, a new chapter began. Not of dominance, but of displacement. And that brings us to the most haunting part of Westbrook's journey. When a king becomes a misfit, they say the higher you rise, the harder you fall. But no one expected Russell Westbrook to fall this hard. Not after being crowned MVP. Not after rewriting history 4 seasons in a row. Not after carrying a franchise on his back when everyone else walked away. But the league wasn't kind. Success has a price. And Russ? He was about to pay all of it. The first shift came quiet. A trade. Not a celebration. A transaction. OKC shipped him to Houston. Reunited with James Harden, his old running mate. The world thought it made sense. 2 MVPs. 2 unstoppable forces. But Houston wasn't home. It wasn't built for Russ's fire. It was built for Harden's empire. The Rockets told him to slow down. To adjust. To fit in. The same words he'd spent his whole career ignoring. For the first time, the storm was asked to settle. And storms don't settle. They destroy or fade. Russ tried to bend. The triple-doubles disappeared. The rim-rocking dunks turned into awkward drives. The chaos that made him dangerous now made him unwanted. When the Rockets crumbled, they tossed him aside. Another trade. Another fresh start. Washington, this time. The Wizards sought his numbers, not his weight. And just like before, Russ gave everything. He carried a broken roster to the playoffs. But no one cared. No headlines. No glory. Just whispers. Empty stats. A relic of a dying era. The league had made up its mind. Russ wasn't a superstar, they called him a liability. Then came Los Angeles. Lakers Nation. A chance for redemption. LeBron, AD, and Russ, three titans chasing a ring. It should have been legendary. But instead, it became a nightmare. From the very first game, nothing felt right. The pace slowed down. His touches disappeared. The confidence? Shattered. The media circled like vultures. Every missed shot a headline. Every turnover a punchline. Westbrook. A nickname that spread like wildfire. Fans who once cheered his fire now booed his very presence. And for the first time in his career, Russell Westbrook looked lost. Not angry. Not defiant. Just out of place. He was no longer the system. He was an outsider in a league he helped electrify. Behind the scenes, it was worse. Locker room tensions. Coaches frustrated. Teammates confused. No one knew how to handle Russ at half speed. They benched him. They shopped him. They blamed him. And the man who had once averaged a triple-double for an entire season was being treated like a problem no one wanted to fix. How does a player go from being unstoppable to being undesirable? Maybe it was his refusal to change. Maybe it was the league evolving without him. Maybe it was everyone else trying to force him into a role he was never meant to play. Or maybe it was easier to tear down a legend than face the fact that his fire could never be controlled. By the time Russ left the Lakers, his reputation was in pieces. Once an MVP. Now labeled toxic. Can't shoot. Can't adapt. Was never built to win. They forgot the history. The loyalty. The numbers no one thought could exist. They reduced Westbrook to memes and soundbites. But here's the thing about storms. They don't disappear. They rebuild. Russ never begged for forgiveness. He never argued with the critics. He never switched up to please anyone. Because deep down, he knew something the league conveniently forgot. Legends aren't defined by how perfectly they fit into the system. They're defined by how violently they force the system to remember their name. And in the shadows, while everyone else moved on, Russell Westbrook was preparing for something different. Not to reclaim the spotlight, but to remind the world that no matter how far you fall, you can't erase the storm that once shook the entire league. They thought it was over. That the story had ended at the Lakers bench. That Russell Westbrook had taken his final shot in the spotlight. But what they didn't know, what they never understood, was that storms don't just fade. They wait. The Clippers didn't make headlines when they signed Russ. No blockbuster welcome. No bold predictions. Just quiet skepticism. Why would they sign him? He'll ruin the chemistry. He's done. But that silence? That doubt? That's always been his fuel. Russ walked into that locker room with something no stat sheet could capture. Pride. Not arrogance. Not nostalgia. But the unshakable belief that he still had more. He wasn't chasing MVPs. He wasn't hunting triple-doubles. He was after something far more dangerous. Redemption. On the court, something shifted. He wasn't the same Russ. He was smarter. More controlled. He picked his moments. Chose when to unleash chaos. And when he did, you saw glimpses of the beast he used to be. Fast breaks that ignited the crowd. Sneaky passes no one expected. Clutch rebounds that turned the tide. He stopped trying to be the system. He became the perfect shock within it. The Clippers didn't just get a point guard. They got a weapon that no one was ready for. And then came the playoffs. Most wrote them off. No one expected fireworks. But Russ? He doesn't operate on expectations. With Paul George out, the pressure shifted. And when Kawhi faltered, who stepped up? Westbrook. He played every minute like it was his last. Hustling for every possession. Diving for loose balls. Dunking with vengeance. Shutting down stars on defense. He didn't just play. He fought. And suddenly, the narrative cracked. Westbrook is actually balling. He's the only reason they're still alive. Where has this version been? It was never gone. It was buried under trade rumors, slander, and years of disrespect. But now, it was awake. Off the court, Russ was still Russ. No passive-aggressive interviews. No excuses. Just gratitude. Humility. And subtle fire. He spoke about family. About mental peace. About blocking out the noise. And it wasn't fake. This was a man who had survived the storm. And came out sharper. He didn't need validation. He was becoming something rarer than a superstar. He was becoming a survivor. But then came the twist. Just when the narrative was shifting in his favor. Just when fans began cheering again. He got benched. The Clippers brought in new talent. The rotation changed. Russ's minutes dropped. Again. And just like that, the old headlines returned. Is Westbrook done again? No place for him in today's league. But here's the difference now. Russell didn't flinch. He clapped for teammates. Stayed loud on the bench. Made the most of every second on the court. Played defense like his life depended on it. Because somewhere along the way, Russell Westbrook stopped chasing approval. And started chasing legacy. Legacy isn't always built in MVP seasons. It's built in resistance. In resilience. In refusing to disappear when the world tries to erase you. Russell Westbrook may never hoist a championship. He may never reclaim the heights of 2017. But what he's proven is something far more rare. That heart doesn't have an expiration date. He isn't just a former MVP. He's a warrior the league couldn't kill. He's a storm that refused to fade. A player who redefined success. Not through trophies, but through survival. And when the final buzzer of his career sounds, they won't talk about the misses, or the trades, or the memes. They'll talk about the fearless fire, the unmatched passion, the man who gave everything, every single night, whether the world cheered or booed. Because Russell Westbrook was never built to be liked. He was built to be remembered.